Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is Everything April. Today's tutorial is on how to make a high-waisted short. This is very easy to make and it's beginner friendly. If this is what you would like to learn, please watch the end of this video. Also, I have posted on this channel how to make the cam collar crop shirt I paired with this short. If you would also like to see how I made that, I'll drop the link in the description box. The title is How to Make a Cam Collar Crop Shirt. Please check that out. I'll drop the link in the description box. So let's get into today's tutorial. Displayed on the screen are the measurements I will be using for today's tutorial. So for the crotch depth, I would get the crotch depth by dividing the hip measurement by 4 and adding extra 2 inches. Usually you get the crotch depth by dividing the hip by 4, but because this is a high-waisted short, I will be adding extra 2 inches to the hip measurement divided by 4. But the standard you add is 3 inches, but for the sake of this tutorial, I will be adding only 2 inches. You can also get the crotch depth by sitting on a flat surface and measuring from the waist to the surface of the chair you're sitting on. The length of this short is 19 inches, but from that 19 inches, I'm going to remove 1.5 inches for the band height. I'll be attaching a band to this short, so I'll be left with 17.5 inches. And to this 17.5 inches, I'll be adding extra 2.5 inches, 2 inches for hemming the lower part of the short and half inch for attaching the band to the short. And on fold, I have my fabric 14 inches, which is half of the upper thigh circumference. And like I said, the length is 20 inches. So the first thing I will do now will be to measure out the 2 inches for hemming the lower part of the short. I've measured that out and I'm going to rule across it. And now, from this line I've just ruled, I'm going to measure the 17.5 inches for the length of this short. This 17.5 inches is because I would be subtracting the 1.5 inches from the total length. So 19 minus 1.5 inches will give me 17.5 inches. I would measure out the 17.5 inches starting from this line I've just measured. So I would measure out the 17.5 inches all across, and then I would rule it into a straight line. To measure the crotch depth, I would place my tape rule on the line I measured, the start line, which is the waistline. I'll place the tape rule on 1.5 inches, that is removing the band height, and then I'm going to measure the crotch depth of 13 inches because that's the crotch depth I'm working with. 44 divided by 4 is 11 inches plus 2 inches to that, that's 13 inches. So that's the crotch depth is 13 inches. I've measured that. Then on this line, the crotch line I just ruled, I'm going to impute quarter of the hip measurements. I'm imputing 11 inches. Quarter of the hip measurement is 11 inches. I will impute that on the crotch line, and I'll also impute 11 inches, the same measurement, on the waistline. The first line, which is the start line, is also the waistline. I'll connect these 2 points together. So to get the crotch extension, on the crotch line, I'm going to impute half of the upper thigh circumference. The upper thigh circumference I'm working with in this video is 28. 28 divided by 2 is 14 inches. So I would impute 14 inches on the crotch line. And on the vertical line connecting the waist to the crotch depth line, I'll come up by 2 inches. And from the angle there, I came out by 1 inch. So I'm connecting from the 2 inches up down. I'm making a curve down to the 14 inches on the crotch line. So this will be for the crotch extension. So I'll bring that close so you see how I made the curve. I went up by 2 inches and I've made a curve, as you can see. Then I'm going to measure the total measurement I have on the crotch line, which is 14 inches. I would also impute that on the length of this short, that's for the lower thigh, and I'll divide that into 2, giving me 7 inches. So I'm going to place quarter of the lower thigh circumference on either side of these 7 inches. So I'm working with a lower thigh measurement of 23 inches. So I divided that by 4 and I'll measure quarter of that towards the right of the 7 inches and towards the left of the 7 inches, so that the measurement will be centralized. I want the measurement to be at the center. So I'm connecting from the crotch line to this measurement I have on the length of the pants. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. I divided the 14 inches by 2, which gave me 7 inches. So the measurement I have, the circumference I have for the lower thigh, I also divided that into 4 and placed the measurement on either side of this 7 inches. And I've connected the from the crotch depth line to this measurement. Then for the waist measurements, I will divide the waist measurement by 4 and add 1 inch for that to that measurement, and I measured that. I've imputed that. So to connect, I'm going to come up from the crotch line by 2 inches, and I'm going to connect the measurement I have on the waistline to this measurement I came up by. I'm not connecting directly to the crotch line, but I came up by 2 inches. So after connecting the measurement on the waist to the crotch line, 2 inches above the crotch line, I'm going to then cut out this. I'm extending my measurement towards the half inches for joining the band to the waist, and then I'll fold in the hemming allowance and cut out. You can see how I folded in the hemming allowance. I'll then cut out the front parts of this short, and then use the front part to cut the back part. So I folded the fabric for the back part into 2. The length for the front and the back will be the same because this is a high-waisted short, but the width of the back should be at least 3 inches more than what I have for the front part. So I'm going to add my allowances on the back part. Note that no allowance was added to the front part of this short. On the waist, I'm going to impute 2.5 inches. That is what I want for the allowance. So as I'm coming down, I would reduce that measurement to 2 inches. As I'm approaching the crotch, I would reduce the measurement to 2 inches. And then for the crotch extension at the back, I'm going to measure quarter of the hip measurement, which is 11 inches. I'll divide that into 2 on the front part, and from that half of the 11 inches, I'm going to remeasure quarter of the hip measurement. I remeasured quarter of the hip measurement, another 11 inches towards the fabric for the back part, and that would be from the crotch extension for the back part. So you can see what I did, and from that measurement I came down by half an inch on the fabric for the back part, and I connected. So that would be for the crotch extension for the back. So I would now connect the dots I've made, the allowances I've made starting from the waistline. I would connect that and make my curve for the back part. The waist for the back and the waist for the front for this short will be the same because this is a high-waisted short. And also the hem parts would also be on the same level. So on the lower thigh circumference measurement, I've added 2 inches sewing allowance to that, and I've connected that to the crotch line. So I would go ahead and cut out. These are just the measurements that will be added, just the allowances were added to the back fabric. So I would go ahead and cut this. I would cut the measurements, and the side for the front and the back will be the same. I'll just trace that out. Please, if you're watching and at this moment you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please take out time to click on the subscribe button now, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So the front and the back are ready. Remember, I added that allowance to this, so I'm going to measure out my dart. For the front dart, I'm going to measure, starting from the crotch side, I'm going to measure 4.5 inches inward. You can see how I place. I'm measuring 4.5 inches, and the length for the front dart will be 4.5 inches. So I measured 4.5 inches for the length for the um front dart. I'm notching that so that it would reflect on the other side, and I would be taking half inch on both sides of this line, and that will be the dart for the front part. So for the back part, I'm going to measure 5.5 inches from the crotch side to inward, and the length for the back dart will be 5.5 inches. The back dart is 1 inch longer than the front dart. So after sewing in the darts, the next thing I will do will be to join the front crotch. I'm going to sew it using 1/2 inch allowance. I'm going to join them together. I'll sew the crotch up for the front, and for the back I would be attaching the zipper for these shorts at the back part. So for the back I would measure out the length I want for the zipper, say 8 inches, and then I'll sew up the remaining part of the crotch, and then I'll join them by the sides, the front and the back by the sides. So for the band, I have a height of 4 inches, and the width of this band is the circumference of the waist plus extra 2 inches joining allowance. So I'm going to iron interface into this. So on fold, I will have 2 inches, 1/2 inch for joining allowance, and 1.5 inches for the band. I've sewn in the darts, and I've sewn up the crotch for the front, and I've joined them by the sides. I've hemmed the lower opening for the legs. I've hemmed it. So the back part, the back side, the crotch is still open because I'll be attaching a zipper to that. So before I sew it up, I'll measure out what I need for the zipper, the length I want, then sew in the zipper, close up the remaining part of the crotch, and then I'm going to also sew in the inseam. I'll close everything up. But before doing that, I'm going to attach the band first to the pants. So you can see I've ironed interfacing to the band, and I've ironed it into two. I'll be using 1/2 inch to attach. I'm going to place the band on the right side. I'm sewing from the right side of the band to the right side of the pants. I'm going to sew with 1/2 inch all round. So when I get to the other end, I'm going to flip it to the other side and then top stitch to cover the fourth seam I have made, and then I'll attach my zipper. So I've done all of these. I've sewn everything. I've attached my zipper. So in case you want to add a pocket to yours, I have videos where I made pants where I attached pockets. So you can check the videos. I'll drop the link in the description box. One is when video on how I made an off-shoulder play suit with ruffles, and one is how to make a shokoto pant. I'll drop the link in the description box so you can check that out. So this is it, guys. We've come to the end of today's tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're yet to subscribe, and also click on the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a new video. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.